Excuse me, Jen?
I'm eating it definitely.
Okay, we're ready to go? Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to the Friday, July 18th, 2025 meeting of the Stratford Regional Planning Commissioners and Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Committee. We are going to kick off with introductions, starting down at the end over there.
Skipping one, Don Manor, Northwood.
No, well, no, he actually, this last.
Rick Healy,
Someone with no voice, we can't start with him. Go ahead.
Rick Healy, Rochester. Don Manor, Northwood.
John Barrington.
Steve Stansel, Wakefield.
Peter Nelson, Newmarket.
One Harrison, Hampshire DOT.
We know it.
I'm Rochester. Sarah Wright's in Newmarket.
Marshall over Brookfield. Mike Levin, Durham. Paul Rasmussen, Durham. Joe Boudreau from Rochester is on voice rest. Mark Richardson, Summersworth. Mike Levinsky, Summersworth.
Lake Bizarre, Middleton.
John Mullen, Middleton.
I can. Okay, I'm Amanda Gorg. I'm with Bike Walk Alliance, but I live in Lee.
And I'm Jeff Rogers, also with Black Hawk Alliance. I live in Mansion. Colin Lindstrom, Regional Planning. And on screen,
The screen. Oh, Kyle. Megan, we'll start with. Megan's here. Kyle, can you hear us? No, Kyle's not there. And who do we have sitting in for that?
Natalie Gemma, SRPC.
Does anybody hear us?
Now we just.
Okay, who else is that? We have those three right there. You gotta give.
Katrin Casperly.
and Jack.
Jack Wade, New Hampshire, yes.
And then Steve.
Who else is there, Jim? Oh, Steve.
Steve
Not
Dunn.
getting up. Here we go.
Just give us a thumbs up.
So, and then Steph. There, okay.
Get everybody?
Think so. We've got
Katrin. Did you check in?
Katrin checked in.
Yeah, she checked.
All right. Welcome. We're going to start with the Commissioner Roundtable. And just before we jump in and ask for updates from everybody, just with one, we just finished our executive committee meeting. Paul Rasmussen from Durham has been nominated as the new executive committee chair. So welcome, Paul. Thank you for stepping up with that. I will remain as vice chair, and we are looking for additional volunteers, one more person to add to the executive committee. So
As an alt.
as an alternate. So if anybody wants to step up, feel free to say so during the commissioner roundtable. And with that, anybody have anything to add? Any commissioners have news or updates? Nothing? Quiet summer?
I'm just venturing, just
Okay.
long discussions both here and everywhere in across the town of Barrington. Our library is finally fully open. They did a masterful job, and I invite everybody here and everybody you know to come visit. The attendance has been over the top. People are really excited.
Great. Mike?
At Summersworth, we're continuing making progress with the solar array project on the Blackwater Road Superfund site. It's you see it, you'll see hundreds, if not thousands of solar panels on the site, about a third of the property of the acreage of landfill. All on ballast, no penetrations. It's 2.3 megawatt project. Power purchase agreements, mentioned it before. Meetings. They're not finished yet. It's a company called Amoresco. They have a partnership with the city. Making nice progress though. We have a strong partnership in this case with EPA and DES. They're monitoring what we're doing and pleased with the project. This is something that's been in the making about 15 years to come to this point. Finding a couple of different investors, finally found one, and the rest of them. But I will say one of the interesting little pushbacks we're starting to hear is screening around the panels. It's pretty noticeable when you traverse past it. It's this, massive amount of paneling and structures. So it certainly looks different than what happened, and some of the abutters are raising questions. How come we didn't do? There will be security fencing around the overall development, but due to a variety of complexities with the actual landfill, the limits of waste, putting up trees and shrubberies and so forth, it's really not 100% practical. Although the planning board did certainly look at that.
Is there an expected completion date?
This fall, I think. This fall. They've really made some fast progress. Started in like late spring.
I would make a suggestion, Jen. Might be nice to have sort of an inventory of some of the municipal solar projects. My town, Newmarket, has been looking at it for a while. It's always a matter of figuring out how everybody else did the financials to make it work. So it might be a really handy guide for all of us as commissioners to know who's doing solar, how do they finance it, size, scope of the project, that kind of thing. So that we basically can have a dialogue between towns that are envisioning moving forward on it.
Yeah, I think that's great. If I could maybe put Katrin on the spot and online, has been her day job role, so that now she can not use the time to participate in this meeting. Katrin is the energy circuit rider for Clean Energy New Hampshire, and I'm willing to guess she's got her finger on all of those projects and might be able to assist in compiling that. And I know that Kyle, the growing staff under the boss who I've been meeting, Kyle has a keen interest in doing a little bit more in the solar energy realm here for SRPC and having a greater role in that. And so maybe Kyle and Katrin might be able to have a partner to put that together.
Right, and there are a couple of projects outside of our region too that are significant. One in Kensington and a couple others that are really huge projects that would be useful. So Katrin, maybe you can chime in on that briefly.
Yeah, I've been supporting projects throughout. We have a huge project in Derry. We've done finished this online in Exeter, a couple megawatts there. I'm trying to remember all the places. Unitil did the large one in Kingston, and of course we have Farmington up and coming, and I'm forgetting somebody else. Concord has working on a big one I've been helping them with. So yeah, there's a lot of them. I know Hampton we just put in an RFP for. So there's a lot of really large solar arrays. It's one of the only ways that your town can actually make money instead of just spending it. So it's a pretty great opportunity, and right now is the time if a town's interested, because tax deductions are leaving us pretty fast.
Peter, I just want to add to what Mike said, that for anybody who doesn't know, this project is built on a Superfund site. So when we talk about screening and the monitoring of the site is unique. We're the only one who monitors the site the way we do anywhere. And so when it comes to making holes in the ground, doing screening or anything like, we swim through a myriad of rules and regulations and everything else that have to pass muster because of it as a Superfund site. We monitor it. It's very unique. John?
Nothing to Middleton, but Stratford County, the Cochito River Local Advisory Committee, which oversees the Cochito River Corridor, runs through Stratford County, starting in New Durham and ends up actually in the Great Bay, Dover. We attended and participated in Rochester's Island Fun Family or Family Fun Fest this past Saturday. We had a booth to help with Stratford Regional Planning, giving us a tent, some tables, some charts. We had an environscape. Nobody knows what environscape is. It shows a watershed and how it affects, how certain things affect watershed. It was very successful. And we appreciate the support from Stratford Regional Planning. And I think we educated the attendees, children and parents alike, what the Cochito River is and how we try to.
That's great. Anybody else?
Peter, I would like to have the staff record and attending the meeting. They didn't get, they never got to say
Okay.
name and who.
Yeah, we did.
Let's take a second to do that.
Mark Davies, yeah.
Yeah, this is Executive Director, I'm gonna steal a second to throw in a mission update for the Commissioner Roundtable. And with Natalie briefly on the spot. Natalie has been preparing a guide for municipalities on the many bills that pass legislature. Some have been signed by the governor, some are still pending. Doing final proofreading on it right now, and likely will be sent out on Monday to municipalities. It outlines all of the bills that impact planning and zoning in your community and highlights where you might need to make some changes to your zoning ordinance, subdivision, site plan regulations. I will say in almost 25 years of following the legislative process, there have been more planning and zoning bills this year than I have ever seen. And there are definitely some that will require you to make changes. So we'll be sending that resource guide out early next week. Along with that, we have some funding, not a ton, but some funding to work with municipalities that may need to make housing related zoning changes. So there's a lot of those bills that are housing related. So we can help you get those amendments drafted. So happy to talk to you. Please share with your municipalities, with your boards. Yeah. Okay.
Great. No. Okay, anybody else to chime in this time your community? Okay, we'll move to is that?
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yep, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So tonight at 7, there's a zoning board of adjustment meeting related to the Christmas dove. This is potentially an opportunity to mitigate some drawbacks in terms of bike and pedestrian access to important locations like the library and the town hall, in terms of where they're placed on 125. I have a family event, so Matt Town, if you're able to make it, I will at least be late. There's a rail trail involved. And there's other access towards the north that could be important. So if you can make it, I hope you can. Otherwise, I might show up late. Thanks.
Steve, just to that prior information, when I leave here, give me a call. We can discuss the corner.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. All right, we'll move on to, third line item here, which was commissioner engagement. How do you connect with town staff and boards?
So, when to sort of bring this topic up from our executive committee meeting. So last week, part of the executive committee met to form Jen's performance review. As part of discussing her goals, we also had conversations around goals board committee, which led to a discussion in terms of to help commissioners better engage with town municipalities on the SFC. So this is meant to be a conversation. Jump in on this conversation. But a couple of things that we talked about, the opportunities in terms of how to get before your selectmen, town council, whatever the municipal town. Some of us, members of the commission, are officials in the town in one form or another. Others not. So they have an actual engagement with the process. To sort of maybe focus more on those who aren't a member of. So we talked about the fact that there's opportunities maybe to bring you from the commission to that. Maybe quarterly, make an appearance before the select board and selectmen. Talk about some of the things that are going on that they may or may not be volunteers, our communities, and time. That was one opportunity, and just some of the issues that have been discussed in the past at board meetings relative to transportation, might be something brought back. Say. These are sort of the ways mechanisms work. Doing just so they sort of recognize that, because they may not all have that knowledge. Those are just a couple of ideas just to begin with. We also want to do may have had impact. Opportunities other members hear from. Anybody wants to toss out ideas? Share that.
Well, my idea. I recently talked to our town planner in Newmarket. Just as I sat down with him at the luncheon, and we talked about maybe having a very quick informal meeting once a month before this meeting happens, so that we can all be aligned. Say, give us, what are your top 3, top 5, top 10, whatever it is, what are the top things that are on your agenda right now that we need to know about, so that when Sarah and I walk into this meeting, we know what Bart and our town engineer and everybody else on their mind. Just really simple. Doesn't have to be complicated. It's just a couple of touch points so we know what's going on. My thought for doing that is we could probably even formalize that a little, informally formalize it, where I just like that idea of having, top hit list for each town, and then everybody should be able to know about that and contribute to it. And then it should be, an easy, it shouldn't be a difficult thing to do. It shouldn't necessarily require a lot of face time either, because obviously everybody's time to go to a meeting is precious. It's what we talked about with our town planner was like, look, we could just make it short. We'll walk in, we'll sit down with you, you give us, what's on your mind, we'll give you a quick update on anything we know going on in the commission, and then walk out, it's over. But also possibly having an online way to just share those notes. So I'm gonna try to pursue that. Can't guarantee it's gonna be a success. And I'm gonna try to think about ways that we could work as a model for everybody. We'll see how it goes.
Don Manchin from Northwood.
I tried, and I don't know if anybody else had this issue, I was gonna hold off until the meeting afterwards, but the segue seems to work. I've talked to the town administration about going to the boards like quarterly, what people have already mentioned. But I also want to keep the community involved via Facebook, because that everybody seems to be on it. And so I took some information from Holland and cut and pasted it to the community chat site. And it's in Facebook purgatory for the rest of its life. And I don't know why. I can post individually, I can answer anybody, I can paraphrase everything that he said. And it would have gone through, but if I cut and paste it, and it was the Northwood Nottingham transportation thing that I had was part of the whole, and so I got a hold of the administrator, even the administrator of the site wouldn't get a hold. So anybody else have that issue? Is it me?
Well, if it's a Facebook thing, it's whoever's administering the site, and they can wrap certain security parameters or what you're able to post, that kind of thing.
So why not some feedback? Because I said, could you please get a hold of me? Why is it not working?
Oh, I don't know.
And I got nothing back, so I didn't know if it was, because if I had paraphrased it, it would have gone through. And that's more work for me, so I just didn't know if anybody else had the issue. Because the people, when I post, people respond, they're interested in what we have to say. So, you know, face to face,
we stuck paraphrasing things.
it might be. I guess I'm on an island. Thank you.
Yes, I was recently appointed, and previously, I guess there had been a rep from Wakefield for a while. And we don't really have a professional full-time planning staff. So I think what I've been thinking about is how to approach this. It's very timely for me. And my thoughts were, I could begin by having regular informal meetings, I think, with the town administrator, and then quarterly meetings with planning, but also meetings with police chief, fire chief, planning, part-time administrator, just to get their thoughts on what's going on in town, what their needs are, so that I can try to attempt to bring them back here. I want to try to create a more formal process than those are past. And ideally, it would be great if at these meetings I can get the information enough in advance for things like funding opportunities for transportation and other grants that I can go back to town in time and speak with them and get feedback back here into gratification.
Yeah, one of the questions maybe from them is all that. I think the conversation recently about you're wanting to share more information with moment goes out to Callie about how the burden is. That sort of leads to a question that comes up with so how do we know, commissioners, what we've already told our planner or administrator? And I don't know, it's just question mark. Everybody kind of has to sort of make that. You want to be copied on that stuff? Oh no, it's an email, might be reporting. What that you can do is you only send to each town, each commissioner.
Yeah, and for us, it's trying to filter like which communications are more critical. Like Steve, Amber, your land use clerk and I, we email multiple times a day. And you're probably, I'm not interested in any of it. So she'll send me questions for procedures or how do I answer this question for this, potential applicant. That type of stuff we need to filter out and start to, like, as staff, think about these larger communications, making sure that we're copying commissioners on those. And so that's something kind of filter. So for example, the item that we're going to be sending out on Monday with the resource guide, it will be stamped draft because our bills aren't still signed yet. But sending that out and with a note about funding, that email is going to be targeted at municipal staff, but we will include you as well, in that communication so that you can
That would be
follow
great.
up. Yeah, so opportunities like that. I asked, how many of you receive our Friday newsletters, bits and pieces in the monthly newsletter? Okay, what are you gonna do? You gonna work at home? It's a pretty good newsletter, so getting it twice, worth it. Okay, I was gonna say, if you don't, like that, keep an eye on those, and consistently Friday afternoons, those will be sent out. And if we have funding opportunities that we're just kind of like generally pushing out, they will always be in that. So keep your eye out for that, and that's a good resource even to just, if you see something in there that resonates for your community, to then just forward it to folks in town, or pick up the phone to, folks in town to say, hey, there's this opportunity.
And I think that maybe one of the questions answered by, not right now.
Yeah.
All of this is open. What are the standard things that you always send to allocate? Who gets?
Yeah.
But you don't want to be redundant, like, please send me here, a lot of ways.
I think unfortunately for those of us in smaller communities, it's gonna be important that we get the information. I think I'm gonna have to take the bull by the horn of some of this stuff and actually force the issue with some of this slip. Because I think fortunately it's just been status quo. So.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add one other thing. I think it's a key discussion to have. And what strikes me is we want to make sure, I think all of our communities want to make sure that SRPC is not ahead of the community.
Right.
I think that's kind of a baseline. So all those communication tools, newsletters, all that, great. And we want to make sure that the communities, if there was a regional transportation issue that affected Dover Somersworth, we don't want to read about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that for me, that's kind of a baseline.
Yeah, okay.
Piece, to maintain effective relationships.
Yep.
And support and the concept of regional growth.
Yeah, so you might be in a unique position here, because we reach out to you as municipal staff
Well,
and as a commissioner. But you raise a good point, because there are many communications that Colin will send to you, particularly when we have changes in the TIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program.
Which is
So
great.
you'll get those,
Yeah.
but like other commissioners don't necessarily. And so things like that, when there are major milestones, might be worthwhile to make sure we're copying
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
commissioner peers.
Well, and I'll just add, I think that what I've seen over the years is that you do that well. And so I think we would just want to build on it.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that we're not going in different tracks and all of a sudden we read about something that affects us. We're not ready to go. Oh, we disagree.
So I'll just like in a sneak preview, and I'm just keep an eye, we're gonna move on to our next agenda item. Sneak preview of agenda item 6. That's gonna be something that'll be a great one for you to follow up with your towns. So,
All right, great. Let's keep moving. Next item is just approval of the June 20th, 2025 meeting minutes. Motion to approve. Marcus and Mark, I have motion to approve the minutes of August 25th. Read what's in front of you.
I'll second the motion. Sarah,
Seconded by Sarah, all in favor? Yes.
Roll.
Roll call on that?
technically you need a roll call, but you have Steve, Katrin, and Jack online that be able to vote. There's policy meeting minutes. Katrin is
Let me just ask them individually.
You can,
Steve, are you in favor?
Yes.
Katrin, in favor?
Yes.
Anyone else is out there? Jack.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's unanimous approval. Great.
Good night.
Mark. Oh.
Abstain.
Okay. One abstention. Let's move on to our presentation for safer streets and roads.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Rogers. I'm one of the recent additions to the board of directors of the BIPOC Alliance of New Hampshire. With me here today is Amanda.
Hi all, I'm Amanda Gorg. I am the executive director of BIPOC Alliance of New Hampshire. I too am relatively recent. I joined them in October. If I happen to look familiar, I used to be a state rep for Stratford County District 25, Matt. But if you need anything, I just want to say the little packets I handed out has a business card in it and about us. So if there should be any questions or anything after this and you have questions and or want to reach out to Jeff and I, please feel free to use that email address. I'm very responsive. I'll get back to you.
Stand by one sec while I use the little share screen. I can start off by saying we very much appreciate you having us here today. Appreciate your time. Folks online viewing the presentation. All right, thank you, Steve. Okay, let's see. I'm here today to talk about the need for safer streets through local control of speed limits. Next slide, please. And while you read our agenda, I'd like to start off with a little about me. In 2015, I had a cycling crash near the Manchester airport. I sustained 7 fractures, including one to my pelvis and one to my skull. I had bleeding inside my skull. The crash happened on a Friday, and the doctors told my then fiance that I was unlikely to survive the weekend. Obviously, I did. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to feed myself again. It was not a fun experience that I would recommend to anyone. However, being on this side of it does make every day a little sweeter. And when I forget things, I have a built-in excuse. So, today's presentation is, of course, not about me. I tell you my story, only to make it clear that I have a very personal connection to the topic today. I hate the fact that now when I get on my bike to ride anywhere, I have second thoughts. I do still ride today, though mostly on trail. So let's dive in. As you probably all know, deaths and injuries are at epidemic levels and need to be reduced. As these graphs show, deaths for pedestrians and cyclists are at the highest levels in 30 years and still going up. An important point is the time scales on those 2 graphs is aligned. We just have to have data going for cyclists and New Hampshire is not immune to this trend. Here are some police quotes from a 2024 Union Leader article. People are driving too fast for conditions. They're driving distracted or impaired. We've seen a massive uptick in speeding and aggressive driving. People are driving faster, they're not using directionals. We get passed on the left, on the right, on a double yellow line. And maybe worst of all is people don't care. And then stepping up to the national level, here are some quotes from Robert Stumwalt, who was NTSB chair from 2017 to 2020. Speeding makes a crash more likely. You're more likely to be injured. Your injuries are more likely to be severe. You're more likely to die. This applies to the speeding driver, other passengers, cyclists, pedestrians, and unlike drunk driving or not wearing a safety seatbelt, Speeding has little negative social stigma, and it has no leader campaigning to increase awareness at the national level. This chart from the League of American Cyclists shows two things. First, the increasing slope of the curve and the color change from green to red both portray graphically how the chance of death for a struck pedestrian increases as the speed of the moving vehicle. Speed is shown on the horizontal axis and chance of death on the vertical axis. Note that in the curve shown here, this averages across ages of all crash victims. If we were to look only at older crash victims, unsurprisingly, the curve would be much steeper. And the second thing illustrated on this graph is shown by the dots along the curve. That's meant to illustrate that states have varying different approaches to speed limits within their state. However, 42 states do all have a statewide speed limit of some kind. In 2024, Forbes magazine published a very good article, the role played by speed in crashes. Now, if you remember your high school science, and it's okay if you're a little rusty, kinetic energy of a moving object is equal to half the mass times the velocity of that object. So this means that kinetic energy in a crash depends on two things: the weight or mass of the vehicle, and two, the vehicle speed multiplied times itself. This means that a car moving at 31 miles per hour has almost 3 times the energy as at 19 miles per hour. That equals 3 times the destructive potential between 31 and 19 miles per hour. So a larger, heavier vehicle, of course, makes crashes more deadly, but speed of the vehicle can play an even greater and deadlier role. At 31 miles per hour, a pedestrian struck has on average 90% chance of dying. At only 19 miles per hour, a pedestrian struck has a 90% chance of surviving the crash. And unsurprisingly, stopping distance also varies greatly with speed. As this graph shows, at 20 miles per hour, you need 2.7 car lengths to stop. At 30 miles per hour, you need 6 car lengths to stop. Now, notice that's a speed increase of only 50%, but the stopping distance more than double. So it's very significant. So after all that grim data about speed, how do we get safer roads? By slowing traffic. How do we slow traffic? Primarily 3 ways to slow traffic. The road design, there's the context surrounding the road, and then there's the speed limit itself. And I'll talk about each one of those a little bit more. For road design, that includes factors like the number of lanes, the width of the lane, presence of or absence of lane side parking, presence or absence of roundabouts, raised crosswalks, speed bumps, or the context surrounding the road. That includes factors like lighting, traffic density, roadside features like signage, entrances and exits, driveways. And finally, there's the speed limit itself, which includes, of course, the value of the miles per hour, the signage, the presence of speed feedback devices, and law enforcement. And of course, the first 2 of those 3 factors take significant time and money, and that cost barrier can lead to inaction. The third factor, the speed limit, is often quicker and less costly to implement. It can be a visible signal what the community considers important. And while alone, it may be less effective than all 3 together, it can still have a measurable and quantifiable effect, as several studies have shown. Cities around the world are spending money and resources to take legislative action. Of some European cities that have enacted some changes, 8 are in France, 7 in the UK, 4 in Belgium, 3 in Germany, and 2 each in Austria, Italy, and the Netherlands, and 8 in other countries. And in Australia, Sydney and Melbourne have taken similar action. I know that slide's a little small to see from your seats, but in the lower rectangle are some factors that have shown improvement following the lowering of speeds in those cities. And they include factors such as safety, active mobility, noise, and air pollution. Meanwhile, in North America, several cities have also taken similar action, including Seattle, Minneapolis, Portland, Oregon, Washington, D.C., Boston, New York, and Toronto. These are some of the legislative changes that have taken place in the United States. In Maryland, they now let Anne Arundel County and other localities set speed limits as low as 15 miles per hour, following an engineering study. Virginia now lets any locality set speeds as low as 15 miles per hour. New York passed Sammy's Law in 2024, letting boroughs within New York City lower speed limits as low as 20 miles per hour, or even lower on certain streets. And California, since 2023, has let localities set speed limits as low as 15 miles per hour. In 2018, the International Transport examined 10 countries who had recently changed speed limits. Their goal was to determine the effect on actual speeds and also on resulting safety after those changes. They found that high speed was associated with 20 to 30% of all fatal crashes. They also found that for every 1% speed increase, they saw a 2% increase in injuries, 3% more severe crashes, and 4% more fatal crashes. They recommend an urban residential speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour, which roughly equates to 20 miles per hour. This would apply anywhere you have nearby vulnerable. The cities within North America of Montreal, Edmonton, Toronto, Seattle, and Boston have all shown measurable improvements coming from speed limit changes alone. As we said before, the best results come when you make improvements to all three factors: design, context around the road, and speed limits. But improvements to speed limits alone can be effective. The changes shown here started as far back as have extended up to the present. So what about drivers who are concerned with increased travel time? Increased travel times are real, but extremely small, because today, drivers already spend a significant amount of their time moving much slower than the posted speed limit. They may be in congestion, or they're at stoplights or stop signs, or they're behind turning vehicles, entering vehicles. Those changes will not go away. The net average increase of our proposal is adding 2 minutes to a 40-minute drive. I think you can argue that it's worth it to stay. And we believe that state law should not be an obstacle to safety. Shown here are 3 laws within New Hampshire that control speed limits within the state. RSA 26560 sets the speed limit to 30 miles per hour in a business or urban residence district. RSA 26563 lets towns alter that speed limit, but no lower than 25 miles per hour. And it requires them to first do a fairly expensive engineering study, which typically costs around $3,000 per intersection involved. And finally, there's the seasonal adjustment allowed by RSA 26562. And this allows a seasonal adjustment, but no lower than 20 miles per hour for a maximum period of 4 months per year, only done once per year. Now, we propose precisely 2 changes to what you see here, and it's shown there. To describe those in more detail, our changes are: 1, reduce the minimum speed limit from 25 down to 20 miles per hour. And 2, reduce or remove the required costly engineering study. Alone, these changes would have 0 impact on drivers anywhere within the state. They merely allow localities, if they choose, to lower their speed limits as low as 20 miles per hour. Localities choosing to lower speed limits would bear associated costs, such as signage changes and educational outreach to local drivers. Some recent examples illustrate the willingness of at least some towns to take on those costs. New Boston has installed some 3 feet minimum pass signs on their own. And Springfield is exploring similar changes. And what about the 85th percentile? This is an old rule of thumb estimating the speed limit of a road. The National Transportation Safety Board says this is out of date and causes problems. It ignores local crash history and the presence of vulnerable road users. They say that setting speed limits should consider the crash history of the region and the presence of local vulnerable road users such as pedestrians, cyclists, wheelchair users, etc. So, to repeat our goals, we're looking for fewer crashes and fewer and less severe injuries to pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, passengers, mobility device users. And to repeat our proposed legislative changes, we want to reduce the minimum speed limit from 25 to 20 miles per hour. And we want to remove or reduce the burden of the engineering study. This would have, again, zero impact immediately on the road. Its impact on trip time is negligible. It really allows localities, if they choose, to lower their speed limit. So, what are next steps? Contact Black Hawk Alliance, me, or Amanda. If you would like to be part of a legislative work group to help shape the so-called Safer Streets law, or if you're just interested in supporting the bill, and spread the word about this idea. Use social media or any other means at your disposal to let other people know about this activity. The Black Hawk Alliance will identify potential sponsors for the legislation, and the working group will help craft the legislation. We anticipate having early meetings of interested parties and municipal officials in September. We started to socialize these ideas and already gotten a little bit of feedback, things that the working group might look at, such as is this local roads only, is it urban only, et cetera. And we welcome your input to that list of ideas. That wraps up for me. In any remaining time, we're happy to entertain questions. We may not be able to answer them all. Take our best shot, and we'll also take them back to the rest of the group. Or if you have other questions, you can feel free to send them out to that email.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Sarah?
It's not really a question, sorry. I have done 9 charrettes with Plan New Hampshire, community design charrettes. If you haven't, if your community hasn't done a charrette with Plan New Hampshire, it's really awesome. But one of the things that surprised me most from that first charrette all the way up until my most recent charrette was how frequently we're talking about state roads that are bisecting like a town center or a village district. So we're not talking about, like, we're talking about like the places where pedestrians and cyclists are the most likely to be. So like Kensington, Bristol, Alton Bay, Newmarket has done a great job with road designing the context, so we're less of an issue. But like these are communities where like Moultonborough specifically, Moultonborough folks we did a walking tour, and the charrette team was scared on the road because we're talking about a state road that goes right down your downtown village district. So our charrette team's recommendations, and I didn't know this before my first charrette, that we couldn't just control the speed limit. So my charrette team's recommendations have always been to focus on like the road design and context. But yeah, ideally we would be able, I would say that I would even drop it to like 15 instead of 20 in some of these places based on the context there. See, not a question, sorry.
Great, that was great.
I do have a question. One thing you didn't make any mention of, and I'm just curious, obviously separation of bike traffic is huge. Even more so, I would think, than speed limits. Could you explain just how the Bike Walk Alliance interacts with other important groups like the Rails Alliance, the East Coast Greenway? Because, we are seeing some progress in New Hampshire with that, and getting bikes off of roads and having dedicated bike and pedestrian pathways is a real clean path to safety for the most part. So if you could explain your relationship with those groups, because to me, that's key. If you're not working with them You can't be a single focus.
I know some of our board members are also working on those as well. And absolutely feel strongly that the best bike lanes are separate. I don't know that anybody in our. However, we're also faced with situations where sometimes the best you can get in your town is a lane that's right. And it's always a struggle because you push for, don't want anything until we can get better. Or do you take that as an increment thing? Amanda, maybe you have some comments?
I would say the New Hampshire Rail Trail Coalition is a fiscal sponsor of ours, so we do work very closely. I'm in contact all the time with the Seacoast Greenway. We have the Tour de New Hampshire in May, and we actually work on the Seacoast Greenway, so it was wonderful to partner with them. I would agree, I mean, Manchester's, this is huge, the situation in Manchester. I mean, I don't want to talk about your personal experience with bike lanes, but I mean, in here, I mean, on the Seacoast. So before I jumped into Bike Walk Alliance, I travel Mount Airy and Durham and Portsmouth, and I'm like, oh wait, the speed limits are already under 30. Like in my head, I didn't realize that actually the speed limit for the state was 30 until I got part of this, we started talking about, really it started with the Sammy's Law in New York. And I realized that towns were doing it anyway, but technically cops can't ticket you unless you're actually doing 30, or you can fight it in court. So we're already doing it. So I'm like, well, why don't we just make the law match what we're already doing?
Some of the Seacoast signs have posted signs saying 20 miles per hour. It's not legal, but they can put the sign up.
Great. So I'm like, we're already doing it. Let's match it. But with your question with, are we partnering with them? Yes, I am in constant. That's my favorite part of the job, is working with the community and trying to partner. I'm part-time. I work 15 hours a week. So it's kind of like, how can I maximize my time? It is working in partnerships with other organizations to move towards the same goal. So your answer is
So
yes.
how do you identify priority areas? Because obviously, if you came to this meeting with a set of priorities for the Stratford region, that would be helpful feedback. Like Sarah said, we're both in Newmarket. We have a very intense sort of traffic enforcement on 108. We have, we've done a safe streets program. We've got a massive amount of pedestrian lighting. Probably not a priority area, but there's others that are. So this intersects with a couple of things we do. One is our safety and crash statistics and bicycling. We pay money to get statistics on where people are biking. I would like to see our SRPC giving you the information on where people are biking. And then I would like to get back information on where you identify priority areas.
Especially if we coordinate and have where people are cycling the most, where they're having collisions the most.
Right.
And does that mean speeds need to be lowered there?
Right.
And the focus of our proposal here is that you guys should be able to lower your speed limit should you choose to. You shouldn't require the state to pass new legislation.
But do you do that? Do you identify priority areas?
We do, yes.
And can you share that?
Of course, yeah. I mean, Colin and I, we chat every once in a while. So I mean, our relationship is new, but yeah, I'm trying to build those with every county. And so we actually have this same presentation we're doing in the Lakes region and in Keene, and so we're trying to get the word out. Bethlehem and Littleton have already jumped on board. So it's a slow but steady race. And so, yes, we are working towards that.
And I think Paul has a question.
Yeah, this is for Joe, actually, but what's the experience of accidents based on biker behavior as well as speed? How much, it does, and I can back this up, I drive buses on UNH campus, and I see everything, and in addition, the law that says bikes can't use sidewalks, bikes, sometimes the best place for the bike.
I can say personally, especially after my accident, I'm gonna ride where I feel safe. And if that means riding on the side, because some of the roads do not feel safe. If I need to ride on a sidewalk, I will. I will try to be very, very careful with it. I cannot say what number of percent of accidents does cyclist behavior affect? I'm quite sure that there are many where that's the case. I certainly see lots of crazy cyclists in the streets of Manchester. We had a gang of high school kids that used to love the pop wheelie down the middle of Elm Street. Didn't see any of them get killed, but it was annoying to many of the folks.
Can I add to that though? Like,
Yeah.
part of, we're not just sick, like, our main focus is like upline is education. So we are in schools, elementary and middle school, teaching kiddos. We work with the highway, Office of Highway Safety. We've tweaked the driver's manual. So this is a very multifaceted program that we've got.
You're targeting them,
We know,
okay, because
we're trying to
in
figure
my
out.
experience, driving around Durham, the people who are worse, they're like mine.
So one thing that we've proposed, and I don't even think this would work, but so we're trying, and I would love any feedback. But we were thinking like when people go and do their when they go to renew their registration, can they be handed something to remind them? Personally, my dad hates when I say this, but I'm like, I think every 5 years we should have to take a driving test. I know it's not a popular thing, but maybe at a certain age, or maybe like there's some conditions, I don't know.
No, I mean, the bicyclists who are the worst behaviors on the road are frequently the guys who are my age.
Oh, bikes, not drivers. Oh.
Do they just go where they want to go?
Oh.
They don't know where they are.
They ignore the bike lanes, they just take over with the street however they want.
Going?
I just want to make an observation that I was in Boston recently, and Boylston Street is probably, if not the whitest street in Boston, but it's definitely got room. It's one way. That's a big difference. Having gone to school there and lived there in the early 70s and rode my bike around, every day was a challenge. That's certainly gotten worse now. But on Boylston Street, they've done something that's very different. And it's obvious when you drive in that street. And I watched it for a while. Where parking was parallel parking was on the left-hand side. They moved that out into the road, 3 or 4 feet. The bike lane is next to the curb. So there's definitely parked vehicles separating bicyclists and the drivers. What that's also done, however, is now there's only 2 lanes for driving on Boylston Street. And ever since I've been in Boston and we grew up in the area and everything else, there's parking, and then there's the double park. Constantly. So that pushes traffic over to 1 lane. Those double parkers are there, or delivery vehicles, whatever it is, certainly slows down Boylston. But when I watch for the bicycle, they ride with much more confidence in that separation from the traffic. And obviously in the alphabet streets where you're crossing intersections, and there's people turning left and that kind of thing. But boy, did that make a difference to me, seeing that. I don't know in New Hampshire where we have any streets that we can do that. I mean, I'm thinking of downtown Dover and Central Avenue, that kind of thing would make Central Avenue basically a 1-lane street. So, I mean, it's nice that it's 1 way in downtown. There are drawbacks.
A couple of thoughts. One is my background is in industrial safety. So I'm not a fan of, unfortunately, and I hate to bring your brain, of telling people what to do. My drive is more towards engineering, so such as what Mark has identified. You know, and taking the decision out of the lap of either the car driver or the cyclist, that they have to do something. A good example of an engineering solution that I went on, it's right in downtown Rochester on the Common. You know, it's counterintuitive, but they made that road narrow. And so you can't drive down there without getting almost a white knuckle situation. It's slow traffic right down. So that's an engineering solution I think we ought to embrace. and maybe I'm a role model for where we go with this. My wife and I had ridden a tandem over 4,000 miles around the seacoast and the White Mountains, and I won't ride that anymore. I don't feel safe in it. You know, you get an 8-foot long bike, and it just you can't maneuver that, very easily. But a model for how to handle heavy bike traffic will be Amsterdam. And I spent a fair bit of time in Amsterdam, and their bike lanes are absolutely paved in gold. And if you step into a bike lane without looking left or right, you will get run over. They do not slow down. But that is a dedicated bike lane. Everybody in Amsterdam knows that. And so that's a good engineering solution. So, yeah, these things are good to the degree that we can implement them, but telling somebody how to be safe is not the same as engineering.
Well, that's a good point. I just would like to iterate. Yes. Those are the kind of things I would like to see. So when you have examples of that, communities need to know. So if someone's done a good job, you should put them on a pedestal, let other communities learn. And if an industrial design solution works, that's going to take you far. So John, you have your hand.
I have a question, and maybe question is on your data. How much has the increased use of electric influenced that data? Because we're seeing more and more electric bikes, and these things go fast. And that's one question. The comment is that I am a mathematician. If anybody's been to Europe, particularly the Netherlands, and particularly Amsterdam, bikes rule.
They do.
They,
awesome.
And you better get out of the way. Ding, ding, ding. And if you don't ding, ding out of the way, they're gonna run you over. But they have millions of bikes in that city. But that city is designed, in my view, for pedestrians. Their roads, when you talk about design, engineering design, one-way streets, they block them off. We're afraid to do that. You're afraid to do it in Boston. Look at the North End. They don't want to do it because the merchants are afraid they're going to lose business. They won't.
That's a good point.
So you got to start.
That's a good point. We also have a president who just recently disparaged bike riding, making fun of another former president who rode a bike. So at the highest level of the country, we don't have that kind of buy-in to the bikes. That's not good. We're not Copenhagen yet. We're not Amsterdam yet, but it's a good point. So, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to build off Matthew's point and react to the suggestion to eliminate or define eliminate traffic studies or engineering studies. In general, I don't support that. I think that in this conversation, not only what Mark was saying, but what Matthew was saying, that we need those kinds of analysis to achieve solutions. And it also, there's liability pieces to that. And all the way from the Fleet Street's concept to maybe just reducing speed limits. It provides some background and credibility, I think, for all parties. Advocates, policymakers, businesses, and so forth to say, yeah, we did a traffic study. And yes, the 85 percentile says the speed limit can be X or whatever it is. The challenge I've seen is professionally is doing those speed studies can actually go in the reverse direction. You have to be careful what you wish for, because it may say that the average speed is in fact, or the 85% is actually 40. And then based on current legislation, you might have to actually increase. So anyway, that's just my thought.
So I have a question.
I applaud the concept of giving more local control, maybe with some modifications to what you said. But my question is, particularly given this past legislative session and the surprising live free or die results of we die, have you tested this in some of the more conservative in terms of what their best position might be?
Even though it's a local control thing?
Yeah, because the only issue.
Well, like to go before you answer the question, since we have Glenn here, want to miss an opportunity to have the state weigh in on this. So go ahead, give us your.
So in DOT, we do support, like yesterday, every time we do a project, we try to incorporate any support active transportation. It's one of our principles, for things to always try to do that. You know, there's always limitations in terms of maintenance, costs, but it's always a high priority in our design. Make sure that we can leverage safety. Yes.
What do you think? What do you actually think about lowering speed limits? The state policy.
So, but I can tell you, myself, that people drive to the speed that the design of the road. You can put the speed limits anywhere you want to. They're going to drive the hot posts. That's why we believe engineering solution. Bringing lanes go all the way to speed lanes, lanes slope down. The street deck slope down, but you find that people will drive to the design.
Did you announce to the group that the complete streets policy just got approved by the DOT? It did on July 7th. The commissioners approved it. So we will have a policy that we get to work with that will get trickled down to the communities. That was very exciting. We've had a good July.
That's very good news. Yes.
Great. I'd like if you guys can wrap it up.
Okay, somebody asked a question about the data presented about whether it reflected the presence of e-bikes. The data I showed stopped at 2020, so it didn't really reflect the presence of that. However, I have seen a separate graph that shows a correlation between what I showed here and the rise in use of smartphones while people say, right. I suspect there might be a correlation. I think that's it. Like I said, we will be convening a working group. If any of you would like to join that working group, just let us know and we can make that happen. And hopefully we can craft some legislation that will have a positive effect on frequency.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Now, also segues nicely into our next discussion, which is the New Hampshire Transportation Plan and our conversation with New Hampshire DOT staff. So maybe Glenn, I'll let you just kind of start that off.
Alan has some spare.
No, give us a. We don't get to see that picture. Where are we at? Give us a quick update on New Hampshire DOT.
So, like,
Okay, I don't have too many details. There is probably going to be a GASSET meeting on August 13th where the details are going to be dropped, but the headline version is that the draft 10-year plan as it stands right now is $400 million over program. That is because of many things. The 10-year plan process started back in October, November, with us submitting the Regional Planning Commission submitting projects. The financial picture has changed drastically since then. And it was changing, there were with the dollars available at the time and the cost of doing projects that continues to rise. So that's kind of the headline version. DOT has the unenviable position of playing catch up with what can we do with the dollars that are available for the projects that are in the plan, because there are too many projects, too many costs for the dollars available. Is the short version. So I highly recommend you stay tuned for that August 13th gas hearing, attend if you can. I don't know if there'll be a virtual option. Usually there is not. There will be gas hearings throughout the fall as usual. I saw the preliminary list. Dover, Rochester, and Durham, I believe, were on the list. That's preliminary, but usually we have 2 to 3. So I will give you that information as soon as it is finalized and please attend. But that's
that's really the message for today is your opportunity to advocate for the projects in your town, the things that are important to you that you feel for the region, transportation wise, and advocating about the funding picture writ large. That's it, the governor's advisory, I would say commissioner, council, I think it's Commission on Intermodal Transportation. They can set the toll rates. That's the extent of their influence over revenues. But that's one area, but it is the start of the long political process of the 10-year plan, which will be debated and approved about a year from now, if all goes well, signed by the governor. It'll go from Cassett to the governor's draft will go to the legislature by January 15th, I believe, by statute next year. Then the legislature goes through it and the governor is supposed to sign it around this time next year. So it is a long process with many opportunities to advocate, in particular for additional revenue generation. Whether it's increasing I believe, fees on vanity plates are increasing this round, or that was proposed. I can't confirm where that landed legislatively. The tolls, gas tax, you name it. There are many opportunities and avenues for revenue generation. So that was Bill Watson's message last time. I don't pull any weight. I don't cut any ice. But you guys going to your legislators, your local reps, senators, and House members, and saying, what's the deal? Like, we don't have any money. We don't have enough money for the projects that we need. If the 10-year plan is a list of needs, if you take that for granted, there's not enough money to accomplish all those needs. So projects, something's going to have to give in that 10-year plan the way it stands. So the details on that how that is going to be approached will be forthcoming August 13th. I would recommend you attend that.
There's a virtual option
There
as
will be a
well, correct? That's a hybrid meeting, Glenn, do you recall?
Don't recall, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because I'd like to re-emphasize, I'm sure you are all aware, but just for the sake of re-emphasizing it, the DOT is not they just use the money they are given by the legislature, right? The 10-year plan is not DOT, taking money and using it. The legislature raises revenues and DOT gets what they get. So if we need more money, or if your goal is to advocate for additional revenue generation, that's the legislators, and it does start with gas a little bit. So I'll shut up.
Start with Paul, and then we'll go to
Question from Joe. So this is quasi related. With regards to the safety document, which we just approved last meeting, is there any impact that we can foresee with regards to no safety inspections on what our going to be? Our safety targets?
You mean the car, the
Yeah.
fact that there's no longer vehicle inspection? Question.
That's unfortunately a wait and see, theoretically, with more people out there driving cars that don't have good brakes.
Should we be looking at filing an amendment to the safety plan based on that information? Or against the car? It does not change the targets, but potentially impacts the targets.
That's a really good question. I don't think I have a good answer for you at this point.
Well, I think we're talking about going back to that document and amending it and saying, in light of this, we need to track it in order to determine if.
Is one thing I will mention on that is we do annually track safety performance measures. So that is definitely something that even without amending that plan, it will be something that we'll be watching as we get new data. Unfortunately, it's going to take some time before we see any real trend out of it. A couple other things just to kind of add to what Colin. Oh, I'm sorry.
The $400 million talked about is a gap between what budgeted and what was in the 10-year plan.
Glenn, do you want to explain that?
What was the?
I just heard you say $100 million gap between what budgeted for the 10-year plan and what is in the 10-year plan. How big is the 10-year plan? Let's go back. That's a great question because put in perspective, we're funding about $405 billion. $2.35 billion. That's where the gap is. We look at it, it's a significant amount of money, but relative to the whole plan. It's plus.
Can you remind us again how DOT sort of sets their priorities? Because if I recall, it was like, well, we're gonna take care of tier 1 roads first, and the ones that are disintegrating, we're gonna let them disintegrate. That was kind of the plan that I always heard. We're gonna take care of the best things first so they don't get worse. Is that kind of still the general attitude, or just give us the big picture?
So let's go with the big picture. I appreciate that we can talk about this. So this has been my life. This is my life. I support the plan, but so the big picture is this whole big budget. Is $500 billion. So it's about a $5 billion plan. So we have basically this our 10-year plan. We have multimodal transportation. We have transportation, cars and vehicles, turnpikes. Again, we have all different resources. One thing Cal mentioned, like legislature, Vegas plan, we have almost zero state balance. But those parts. So a big plan. So I think this focus on really is part of the communities is the transportation portion. Made up of 3 plans. There is some state turnpikes. Those are our primary plans. Plan. And the biggest piece of what turnpikes in the state. Our largest is right now we're level funding the 10-year plan about $235 million. About half of that money goes to our core programs, our bridges, our roads, and that's really for maintenance and preservation of those roads. Keep them in good, keep good roads good, and keep bridges optimal. Half our budget. Then we have money gets invested in non-residence bridges. Again, residence bridges to make sure they're safe, and non-residence bridges to make sure that we keep them off. Then we also invest in local projects. We have our CTAP program, our CMAP program, we have a program. Those are all also a big part of our budget. So the other half of our budget is our capital improvements. Basically, our bigger projects throughout the city. That's where the third plus of our money goes to. That's where we're finding the biggest. One thing we are committed to is keep our programs funded, so we keep good roads, keep our camps moving, safe, preserve what we have. Once it starts deteriorating, it's very expensive. So we're out to preserve what we have today. So the real big thing is doing new projects, expanding our system. When we get the projects in the plan, and we're finding that we are focused on is how to sell that. Yeah, we just come up with strategies now. Gas it. What's the best strategy to do that? That's what we're still.
As in the past, 10-year plans always been fully funded as requested by you.
So we kind of work back, right? So
Over the years.
Yeah, but how we kind of mentioned what we do is that we don't raise revenue, we're given budgets. And we basically, our job is to do the best we can, money we receive. Highway, turnpike revenue, and that's our job. So basically we try to do the best we can for money we have. We try to keep it reasonably constrained each year. That's what we're doing this year. When we came back and checked, it was reasonably constrained, right? So a little bit how the gap got. two or three real big things happened. One is inflation increased, so we had almost a percent increase into our inflation. You put that out over 10 years, compounded, that ends up to about $100 million. Also, our indirect cost rate for federal projects to maintain the DOT and function jumped up 2%, $5 million per year, this 10-year plan. And then we have a lot of cost escalation. One of the big hits we have is a lot of projects we had in the 2025 10-year plan pushed out and got put into this draft 10-year plan, which ended another $100 million. And we start adding all those factors up. We were basically saying, to keep this to a 10-year plan, not get in a situation where we have a 12-year plan. We said, we got to get it back to a 10-year. So that's our strategy. That's what our goal is, and that's what we're working with. Strategies. So that's the 400.
Mark? This is kind of theoretical, but with the money that's available, and this may be too early to tell. We have projects that involve multiple towns. We have projects in the 10-year plan that are unique to an individual town and that kind of thing. Obviously, dollars are different. Is there any sense of where things stand as far as looking at getting a lot of small projects done or getting fewer of the bigger projects done with the money that's not available?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something that we're gonna have to start to grapple with. I think that's some of what is gonna come out of the meeting in August, when there'll be more information shared. So, just a little, I know Colin shared what the acronym GASSET is, but GASSET is comprised of the executive counselors, so governor and executive counselors, as well as the DOT commissioner. So part of it is, us respect to DOT. They want to start and break the news to the executive counselors before we start getting into the weeds and getting some details. So just wanted to be proactive here and make sure that we start the conversation early. From our end as a planning commission, there are a couple things where we will have a role in helping to get to a fiscally constrained plan. And so one of the things we can talk about is how do we advocate for revenue? And while Colin and I, as staff, cannot go before a legislature and lobby, you can go and share your thoughts. Another thing I'll say is and we always send out the schedule of GASSET hearings. Go to them because your executive counselors listen. They don't want to hear from us as staff at those meetings. The focus is on public comment. And so I'll share an anecdote from that Bill shared with us when the RPC directors met a couple weeks ago. And he shared an example of two projects. One is the Bow Concord widening project that is a big white elephant. So exit 6 and 7 in Manchester. And only one person showed up to the hearings and spoke to the Bow Concord widening and wasn't in support. Whereas Manchester took one of their MTA buses, filled it, took the bus to the meeting and had folks speak to exit 6 and 7. So I'm not saying we talk to Coast and get a bus and fill a bus, but the point being that those voices weigh heavily in the process. And so as we learn more, if there are projects that are critical to the region, we can bound together to advocate for, and that will weigh heavier than some. Another thing is USDOT currently going through the transportation reauthorization process. That's the federal budget for transportation dollars. New Hampshire is 50th out of 50 for federal transportation funding. Please explain how Vermont gets more than we do.
Your legislative.
That's right. So, and I know that, those of you who attended, the RPC commissioner convening, in May, we had folks from the entire congressional delegation was there and represented, Maggie Goodlander came and spoke during lunch. So they want to hear, and she in particular wanted to hear, what she could do to represent New Hampshire specific to the reauthorization bill. Chris Pappas is on the Federal Transportation Committee. He has a vote. He is there working on it. So again, another person you can reach out to advocate for the state, not just our region, but the state. So that's another piece of the conversation here as we get in. And then the one last thing I had is the 10-year plan. We all know it takes a long time to go through the 10-year plan process from when we kind of envision a project to it is built. And there might be projects in there that are no longer priorities. So one thing that would be important is to, as a self-reflective step, is to look at what your municipality has in the 10-year plan. Are there things that your municipality can say like, yeah, take this out? I don't want it anymore. And that would be something that is of benefit to the process. And we can always get you the project listing if you need it and put you where to find it.
So Jen, can I just ask, in Brookfield, we had in August, a couple of reps. So could you email me or share with the group, like, here's the deal. I understand now what the, right, the landscape, but in terms of speaking points, like what I could say and what I can ask that would help, I'm happy to.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we're not gonna solve the budget crisis today.
No.
So, and we want to keep moving on, so we wind that up and move on to the business. Does anybody have any other business? There's no other business. I don't think we have any citizens, but we can open it up to any citizen comments, citizen forum. Since we don't seem to have anybody.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
And we're done. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.